Our last presenter is Guido Schwarzendahl, who owns a master's degree in geography, political sciences and sociology, and a business administrator for housing. He is a board member of Cooperative Housing International since 2013 and currently president. His primary interest, focus and drive has always been social housing and specifically cooperative housing. He's managing director of a co-housing cooperative since 2001. He is also involved in various committees, both nationally and internationally, with the focus on cooperatives, housing and urban development. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for your invitation too. And this CV was definitely too long. Apologize for that. Okay, so I'm here actually in two roles. So I'm CEO of a housing cooperative Bauverein Halle and Leuna. One of the partners, you can see it there on the poster. And it's really a funny fact. That are only 200 meters. The cooperative is away from here, so when you will go back afterwards to the marketplace, you will see a huge white building that's a housing cooperative. So that's my first role. And the other role is that I'm currently president of Cooperative Housing International. And so we are coming now to something completely different. That's Cooperative Housing International, as no one mentioned the role of housing cooperatives, so I can do that now. And I want to introduce you Cooperative Housing International, and I also want to give you some very, very short insights on my view on Halle-Neustadt and the experiences and suggestions on how things could be potentially better. And coming back to the last question, I've spent 2 years of my life in Halle-Neustadt, and that have been 2 very good years. And to be honest, I live now not in Halle-Neustadt. But that's not due to the quality of Halle-Neustadt. So, next slide, please. Okay, introducing Cooperative Housing International. As you can see, Cooperative Housing International is part of the ICA, the International Cooperative Alliance. The International Cooperative Alliance is one of the oldest NGOs in the world, founded in 1895. And it's one of the largest, if you are looking on the number. So more than 1 billion cooperative members are existing on our planet, and we are now actually heading to 1.2 billion members. And CHI, Cooperative Housing International, is a sectoral organization within the ICA. The ICA is the apex organization, and we have been established to promote the development of cooperative housing in all countries. And next slide, please. Yeah, what's our vision? To make it short, our question is always, could cooperative housing help to close, especially in tight markets, the gap between supply and demand? That's our first and, as I feel, most urgent question. And our mission is to unite, to represent and to promote the international cooperative housing movement. And we do that by promoting, encouraging and helping in the establishment of housing cooperatives everywhere, and everywhere means everywhere, and you will see that on the next slide, please. So this picture is not so good, or the quality of the screens is not so good. So the whole world is not green. They are missing the gray countries. The gray countries are all the parts you can actually not see. Sorry for that. All these grey countries are countries which are not represented in the ICA, and there are especially countries like, for example, the western part of South America, or you can actually just see Brazil, which is now a green country, and Brazil is since a few weeks member of Cooperative Housing International. And it's really interesting to imagine that such a huge economy like Brazil needs such a long time to get a member of the Cooperative Housing International. So, the broader ambition of our organization is to raise greater global awareness of the role cooperatives can play in the delivery not only of adequate and affordable but also accessible housing solutions. And if you have an eye on the cooperative principles, as for example the points or the bullet points, voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, member economic participation, autonomy and independency, education, training and information, and so on and so on. It's really interesting to imagine that in a lot of countries, especially in a lot of countries of the former part of the Soviet Union, cooperatives are absolute massive under pressure. So they are in some countries they are not still existing as cooperatives in this sort or manner of the actual cooperative principles. And for example, we have been for several times together with Ivo and Friedrich Ebert Foundation in Ukraine before the war break out in 2022. And we discussed with a lot of politicians about the role cooperatives could potentially play in the role of housing for the displaced persons in the Ukraine. And I always want to get back to this point. Always ask yourself in your country when you are looking especially on the very tight housing markets and the big gap between supply and demand, whether cooperatives could be a part of the solution. Not the whole solution, but could be a part of the solution. And next slide, please. Why could they be a part of the solution? It's especially due to the big blue ball or whatever on the left side of the screen. It's the purpose of every cooperative. The purpose of every cooperative is to promote the members. That's in the German cooperative law, chapter 1, to promote its members, and profits are made in the cooperatives only to achieve this goal. That means we want to have accessible, adequate and available housing for our members. So next slide, please, on a very big step from the International Forum of National Cooperative Alliance and Cooperative Housing International, coming back to Halle-Neustadt. And why I want to give any suggestions to handle or to deal with Halle-Neustadt, it's as I lived for 2 years there, I've already spent 30 years doing housing, especially housing cooperative, and this in Halle-Neustadt, and I worked for 14 years in Halle-Neustadt. So I have a few very specific insights and experiences, and I want to share them with you. And the first point is we have to accept that the large housing estates actually, and in our times, bear the main burden of integration and thus significantly relieve other neighborhoods. And Halle-Neustadt, for example, relieves massively the old part of the city, as it is more or less the hometown for a lot of the migrants. But this relief must flow back into the large housing estates in the form of increased contributions and not cutted contributions from the other neighborhoods. And you will find, especially in German literature about huge housing estates, the new wording city of arrival. And Halle-Neustadt is a city of arrival, but it is a city of arrival as we have made it so, and not because it's the only conceivable task for the large housing estates. And when we ask what can we do against segregation, we feel that it is our task that we will have low rents in all neighborhoods in the city and not only in the large housing estates, in order to allow to choose people where they want to live inside the city. Next slide, please. So my suggestion is let's try to identify and name the deficits in Halle-Neustadt, and always, please always, let's compare them with the original design of the planned city Halle-Neustadt. And the question will always be, what was planned initially, what was not implemented, And what is still a need today? And this answer is really not very difficult. You can nearly ask everyone in nearly every age of the inhabitants of Halle-Neustadt. Restore the original qualities, meeting places for all ages, open spaces, venues, cultural enrichment. And these findings must be put first and repeated over and over and over again to counteract the situation of segregations. And as I've written down, all locations and neighborhoods contribute to living in the city. However, the extent of our attention or involvement in the development will be decisive for its positive further development and the acceptance of those living there. Okay, and let's always think on more measures to enable more identification with the large housing estates, Halle-Neustadt. Next slide, please. Thanks for listening.